Ukrainian President Zelensky has agreed to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin, the meeting date of which is yet not final, but likely within 2 weeks and will be followed by a trilateral meeting between Trump, Putin and Zelensky. The deadlock that persisted since full-scale war erupted on 24 February 2022 is likely to end sooner. But everyone guessing the outcome in the form of a peace deal. Is Zelensky going to cede territory to Russia, or Russia is ready to compromise Donbas for security guarantees to Ukraine? And the big question, what US is going to churn out of the peace deal? Will US do a mineral deal with Russia too, like it did with Ukraine? But the biggest question that looms large, what a peace deal doesn't materialize? Will there be a bigger war, perhaps a third world war? I will try to answer these big questions in short, but with facts and figures, with perspective. Until then, kindly stay tuned to the end of this video. So without further ado, let's get started. President Trump on 18th August first had a bilateral meeting with President Zelensky. According to sources, this meeting was followed by a 40-minute call to President Putin. The next roundtable was with European leaders, where all, including Zelensky, shown their desire in bringing the war to end for the lasting peace. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz also wanted immediate ceasefire. However, consensus shows that even Zelensky agreed to pursue peace deal under President Trump's leadership. In the Oval Office meeting, President Trump presented Zelensky with a map titled Russia-Ukraine conflict map, marking areas under Russian control or contested with shading, particularly highlighting eastern and southern Ukrainian regions, possibly including Crimea, Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson. Zelensky pointed out that he shared battlefield details on that very map and expressed his appreciation. Trump commented, "It's a good map." Zelensky responded warmly, "I'm thinking how to take it back." To which Trump replied with a laugh, "They could figure that out," showing a light-hearted tone despite the seriousness of the content. That is the nutshell of the meeting, and that is a glimpse to the peace deal, if happens. In the meeting, Trump assured Zelensky that the US would help Europe provide security guarantees for Ukraine in any prospective peace deal, though details remained vague. Most of the European leaders and Zelensky was consistent on having Article 5 kind of security guarantees that last long and are respected and could be implemented practically. Trump had already clarified no NATO membership for Ukraine. In that case, what would happen if there are no NATO membership for the Ukraine? So what will be the architecture of security guarantees? Perhaps that may be work in progress. Would Putin agrees to European peacekeeping force remains to be seen, as until now, Russia has been against any such moves. Soon after August 15 talks between President Putin and Trump, Putin had already moved in a big chunk of defense equipment to Donbas area. It already occupied Crimea way back in 2014. Ukrainians and even Europeans look exhausted of Ukraine war that is running in its 4th year. Ukraine has lost territory after territory. Its cities got devastated. Its people got killed. Its economy went berserk. So Ukraine is likely to give away Donbas, without which Russia would not agree to any peace deal, as it has already declared them as Democratic Republic of Luhansk and Democratic Republic of Donetsk in the Donbas region. And it has signed a friendship treaty. So if Donbas is coming to Russia's fold, the root cause of the war, which Russian leaders like Putin and Sergei Lavrov spoken much about, are likely to mitigate Russian apprehensions. However, Russia may return rest of the areas won by it and controlled by it after its special military operation. That will make Kyiv a point for settlement and answer its public. This is most likely a scenario, as it also suits US President. Putin has already offered a mineral deal before United States finalized one with the Ukraine that Russia would allow US to extract rare earth minerals in such areas won by Russia in the Ukraine war. But when the mineral deal of Russia and US will be finalized, that would be very interesting to know. Perhaps, maybe after the peace deal between the Ukraine and Russia. United States under President Trump now implementing the reverse policy of President Henry Kissinger to contain People's Republic of China. United States, which fears Russia-China-Iran nexus, wants Russia to be friends to contain China. Otherwise, if both go together, it will be a bigger headache. In the 1970s, the United States used rapport with China to weaken Soviet orbit of influence. Trump seems to be thinking in reverse. Make a deal with Russia to limit China's reach. A fragmented Eurasia bloc benefits Washington. Russia has vast oil, gas, uranium, and critical rare earth minerals. Right now, most of that flows to China at discounted rates. If Trump normalizes relationship with Russia, United States and European firms could re-enter or influence these markets, limiting China's mineral monopoly choke points. That is why Ukraine is now seen as a bargaining chip. Giving away Donbas, Crimea to Russia in a legal framework is the price to pay for pulling Russia partly back into the Western orbit and balance China, which US sees as a pacing challenge. If Russia agrees for European forces or even US military presence on its border with Ukraine or in select areas currently occupied by Russia, then in future, United States would always have leverage to move forces to contest Russia in case of a conflict. Today, USA suffers most from Chinese dominance in rare earth minerals and China even a dominant supplier to whole of Europe. Chinese mineral monopoly can be detrimental to United States' own security. Trump administration is worried about growing Chinese-Russia friendship. The worry is grown stronger as facing Western technology and export restrictions on aluminium, copper, nickel. Russian firm non-nickel is relocating some smelting activity to China. The plan includes building a new copper plant in China targeted for completion by mid-2027 and forming a joint venture with Chinese smelters such as Xiamen CND and Jiangsu Copper. The feeling in Russia and China growing together is getting more stronger in US and Europe when both the nations had sailed together their aircraft carrier navies in the Pacific recently in July in the Sea of Japan. That has sent a lot of concerns to United States. According to news reports, this move helps evade sanctions by exporting finished metals labeled as Chinese, but this has defeated Trump's control on minerals chessboard. So, it is not just the geostrategic naval exercises, but it is the mineral wealth that both are cooperating to evade sanctions. However, Trump's tariffs has also done damage to its own relationship with its allies and friends. Now let's have a look at Chinese dominance in global production, refining, and processing of critical minerals. China controls roughly 85 to 90% of global rare earth refining, 68% of the cobalt, 65% of the nickel, 60% of lithium, and much more. Specifically for rare earths, China accounts for over 95% of production, having a tight grip on supply chain. Now coming to Russia's supply with whatever data is available as of now. Russia produced 18% of the world's antimony in 2022, while China produced 54% around. Russia supplies about 17% of world's class 1 nickel, which is crucial for EV batteries, among other uses. According to media reports, China's companies are supplying gallium, germanium, antimony like minerals to Russia's military industrial complex, but not vice versa. In 2023, bilateral trade between Russia and China surged to a record $240 billion. Europe imports virtually 100% of its rare earth elements from China. The pacing challenge to US, including heavy rare earth, vital for permanent magnets. Europe is about 97% reliant on Chinese magnesium imports. China possesses about 60% of the global lithium supply, 60%, and over 50% of manganese and cobalt. According to a Reuters report, Chinese exports of antimony and germanium to the European Union plummeted by 88% and 95% respectively when comparing June to January this year. In this background, Ukraine, which holds some of the largest untapped critical mineral reserves in Europe, it has lithium, titanium, graphite, nickel, cobalt, and rare earth deposits. According to EU estimates, Ukraine has some 5 lakh tons of lithium oxide reserves, which is enough for millions of EV batteries. Ukraine is already a top global exporter of titanium and iron ore. The European Union signed agreements with Ukraine in 2021 to integrate its raw material base into the European Union's critical minerals strategy before the war escalated. To understand this supply, Ukraine was being positioned as Europe's future supplier of critical minerals, reducing EU dependence on China and Russia. So by occupying eastern and southern Ukraine, areas like Donbas, Zaporozhye, Dnipro, etc., Russia gains control of key mineral-rich areas. Russian state media has openly discussed exploiting Ukraine's mineral wealth to weaken Europe's plan for supply diversification. So to an extent, the Ukraine war is also about resources, while it mainly attributed for geopolitical reason. Control of Ukraine's resources would reshape global critical mineral supply chain, giving Russia and China a stronger grip and denying Europe a chance to diversify away from them. Trump would try to leverage a position that suits to US for control of such a mineral wealth that will render it a tight grip on global supply chain. You would recall that President Trump has been claiming that he has solved multiple wars. Wherever he has done such a peace deal, he has also done a mineral deal. So he is trying to break the Chinese monopoly choke points of the rare earth minerals. Whether it is Africa, whether it is Bolivia, whether it is Brazil, whether it is Rwanda, DRC, whether it is even the Pakistan, India, where he claims that he has stopped the nuclear war. He had tried to do a mineral deal with Pakistan also. So this is to contain China in any form, wherever China is. President Trump wants to handshake the rival Russia, because it is the China which is the pacing challenge to United States. And in that, Trump would not mind even shaking hand with opposite rivals of its allies. So this is what you would see if the peace deal doesn't materialize. 100% there are chances that the war would escalate. Russia would has almost 30% of the territory. But if the peace deal doesn't materialize, Russia will go all offensive. And the proof is it has moved heavy equipment, artillery, tanks to Donbas region. So if Europe or United States, in collusion with Ukraine, try to subdue Russia to regain Donbas militarily, then Russia would retaliate with heavy force. So that has a chance to trigger a third world war. That is a scenario which everyone would like to avoid. So world should hope that there is a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia, and the peace deal must be lasting. The Russian apprehensions or concerns of root cause of war, their culture, their language, their security, falling Ukraine to the Western influence of orbit, they should be addressed. And Ukrainian, they should not go to the Western orbit of influence. It should not join NATO. That is very important. So that is, if happens, perhaps would pave the way for the lasting peace in the Europe